He would sit in the second row. He always did, close enough to be seen, not close enough to be mistaken for proud. Graduation mornings have a manufactured calm, the kind that smells like starch and overheated coffee. I stood with the other graduates, tugging at sleeves, checking tassels, pretending not to scan the audience. When I found him, felt less like recognition and more like confirmation. He was exactly where I expected, beside his wife, hands folded as if attending a service he hadn't chosen. The dean spoke, names were practiced, futures were promised with institutional confidence. Then my father stood. It wasn't dramatic, that was the worst part. He didn't shout or shake. He simply cleared his throat and said conversationally that since this was a day for honesty, wanted to clarify that he would no longer be supporting me. That I wasn't his real daughter anyway. That he'd done more than enough. The room reacted before I did. A sound rippled through the seats, shock finding shape. Someone behind me inhaled sharply. Remember thinking distantly that this must be what glass feels like before it breaks. I smiled. Not because I felt brave, because I felt finished. There are moments when the body chooses before the mind catches up. Stepped out of line and walked toward the podium. The smile stayed because it had a job, keep me upright, keep me moving, this from turning into something loud and useless. I'd imagined this confrontation before. In kitchens, in cars, in letters I never sent. I hadn't imagined it here, under banners and borrowed dignity. But I'd prepared for it all the same. There was an envelope in my bag, cream-colored, thin. It had been there for years, traveling with me through apartments and dorm rooms. Quiet weight I never explained. Not leverage, exactly. Insurance. Something you carry not to use, but to know you could. The microphone hummed when I reached it. I didn't look at my father. I looked at the dean. The row of administrators suddenly unsure of their choreography. Since we're sharing family information, I said, my voice surprised me by how steady it sounded, this seems like the right time. I took out the envelope. Paper makes a soft sound when it's handled carefully. I didn't wave it. I didn't raise it. I placed it on the podium, flat, evidence waiting its turn. This, I continued, is documentation related to my enrollment, donor agreements, correspondence, records the university already has copies of. A pause. And some it doesn't. His wife reacted first. Her face changed in a way I'd seen only once before, years ago, when a bank letter arrived with the wrong logo. The color drained, not theatrically, but completely, as if someone had reached behind her eyes and turned off the lights. Her hand tightened around her purse strap. She didn't look at me. She looked at him. My father laughed, softly. A reflex. The sound of a man reaching for familiarity. This isn't the place, he said. That was when the provost stood. Authority doesn't need volume. It needs timing. She stepped forward with a hand raised, not at me, but at him. The kind of gesture that freezes rooms. Sir, she said, we need to pause the ceremony. The word pause did more than silence him. Relocated power. She addressed the audience briefly, professionally, apologizing for the interruption. Then she turned to the dean, then to campus security, then back to my father. We've been in communication regarding these materials, she said. This is not new to us. Given the public nature of your statement, we're moving this conversation forward now. My father's smile thinned. His wife's fingers trembled. I stepped back. That part mattered to me, that I didn't stay center stage. I hadn't come to perform. I'd come to stop pretending. The ceremony halted. Murmurs thickened, then dulled into silence as administrators formed a small, controlled cluster. My name badge felt suddenly heavy against my chest. Wheeze! Somewhere in the distance, a photographer lowered their camera, unsure what story they were allowed to capture, escorted my father and his wife toward the aisle. Not roughly, precisely, the way institutions remove problems without acknowledging emotion. As they passed, his wife finally looked at me. There was no anger there, only fear, naked and immediate. I realized then that she had always known this moment was possible. She'd just believed like him that I wouldn't dare. The ceremony resumed 20 minutes later. People shifted back into their seats with the awkward obedience of an audience that had glimpsed something real and didn't know what to do with it. Names were read again. Futures were promised again. When my name was called, the applause was careful, not loud, not cruel, just enough. Crossed the stage. Took the folder. Shook the dean's hand. The motions felt distant, like watching myself from across the room. Father did not return. Later, outside, people avoided my eyes. A few offered quiet congratulations. One professor squeezed my shoulder and said, "You handled that with restraint." I nodded, though I wasn't sure restraint was the right word. Survival, maybe. Timing that evening alone in my apartment, sat on the floor with my gown pooled around me and finally let the day settle. The victory, if it could be called that, felt small and specific. No one clapped for it, no one crowned me anything. What changed was simpler. No longer had to negotiate my existence. There would be consequences, legal ones, familial ones. I knew that. Some doors would close without drama. Some questions would never be answered cleanly. The idea of a father, even a flawed one, doesn't evaporate just because truth arrives with paperwork. But the weight I'd carried, the constant readiness, the quiet fear of being exposed, dismissed, erased, that loosened, not all at once, just enough to breathe. I folded the gown carefully. Put the envelope back where it belonged, not as a shield anymore, but as a record of what had been endured. The next morning, woke up without checking my phone for messages that might undo me. That felt like graduation.